All right, hello, boys and girls. Welcome to Homeschool Academy. We're going to be talking about week number 16 of fourth grade science and technology. All right, so today's lesson is going to be about the basics of electricity. All right, you might have heard the term used lots of times. There is electricity over here. There is no electricity. Electricity being generated. What is this electricity that people talk about? We're going to find out. Well, electricity simply refers to a flow of tiny particles known as electrons and potentially in some cases protons, right? But let's just keep it simple right now. It's the flow of electrons, all right? So that's what electricity is. So when electrons start flowing, which you learned about electrons a few weeks ago, if you were coming with this curriculum, that electrons are going to be the negatively charged particles of an atom. So when those electrons start moving around and they start jumping from atom to an atom in the same object, in the same matter, well, electrical current is going to start flowing because of that. Well, that's what electricity is. Now, electricity can be seen through nature as lightning, like bolts of lightning, which contains large numbers of electrons flowing through air all at once. Or electricity may be controlled as it jumps from one atom to another, like jumping through wires and to power TVs and computers. Well, there are two major types of electricity. There's static electricity, which is going to be like that lightning or that something that jumps up off your hands if your hands are so dry. They call them static charges. So if you rub a balloon, for example, against your air, you may experience something called static charges. Why? Electrons moved from the balloon to the air. That's what happened over there. Well, the strands of your hair now have extra electrons, which are all negatively charged. Because like charges repel, electrons try to fly away from each other, thereby resulting in sparks. Well, that's a type of electricity. It's exactly what happens with lightnings as well, even though lightnings will come with larger electrons and larger voltages over there. And the second type of electricity is going to be moving electricity. And this is generated when there's a constant flow of electrons forming an electrical current. And there are many ways in which electricity is generated, but most of them is going to involve what we call rotation of a metal in a magnetic field. This is called electromagnetic generators, and that's very important for you to understand how that happens. So there are going to be coils of wire that are wrapped around a cylindrical metal, and when the metal rotates, what they discovered is electrical current will be found in those wires. Well, we don't know why that happens, but it's just a fact of nature, but we just stumbled on it a few hundred years ago. And we've taken advantage of that to generate electricity all through the years, through things like the turbine. Have you driven down the countryside to see something like this? This is called a wind turbine. Okay, so which is a way that they are going to use the wind to move the blades of this turbine over here. And then there is going to be some metal that's going to be rotating in between coils of wire over there, and electricity is going to be generated because of that. The rotating metal is called a rotor, and the stationary coil of wire is called a stator. All right, let's try to draw it so we can internalize this a little bit better. All right, so if you have a coil of wire like this, okay, so let's say there is a coil of wire like this, and it goes all the way down like this, just around like that, right there. Just goes all around, all around, all around this particular metal. Okay, and you have this metal like this. Okay, so if this metal, which is called a rotor, okay, a rotor, and this particular coil is called a stator. A stator. Alright. So what our scientists discovered several years ago is if you were to make this rotor start to rotate, okay? For example, it rotates and there are wires wrapped up to this stationary place like this. Electrical current will start to flow in these wires. They call that thing electromagnetic induction. Okay, so that's just the basic way electricity is generated. Well, why does that happen? Well, we don't know. It's just a fact of nature that when you rotate a metal in a magnetic field, electrical current is going to be generated. Well, guess what? We've used that theory to generate multiple voltages and currents all through the years, and that's the principle behind the electricity that powers your home. Okay, so go ahead and answer this question for me. What are the two major types of electricity? Well, can you remember static electricity, static and dynamic electricity? Okay, so read how moving electricity is generated. Explain it to your mom and dad. All right. So did you get something from it? Thank you for joining me today, boys and girls. Basics of electricity. Remember, God cares about you, and so do we. Bye-bye.
I'll be your hero's buddy, and as you study with heroes born.